Hi friends, how's it going? I hope you're having a great day. If you're new here, my name is Andrea and welcome to my channel, Eldon Acres. I wanted to thank you so much for being here with me today. So per usual, today is Sunday and every Sunday I like to go ahead and meal prep for the week to come. So that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to prep a couple meals, nothing too crazy today, but first things first, I was at the grocery store the other day and they had sliced mushrooms on 50% off. So yesterday I was at the grocery store. So I went ahead and I bought 4 packages of them and I'm going to throw them in sandwich bags and freeze them. So this is something you can do, and I like to do this a lot actually. Anytime I'm at the grocery store and I see produce on 50% off, I will usually buy it and throw it in the freezer, chop it up, dice it up, whole, whatever you need to do. But pre-sliced mushrooms, usually they're not overly cheap per se. Usually it's a more expensive way to buy them, but it saves a lot of time because they're already pre-sliced. Now, these were regularly, actually they were on sale this week, so they were regularly $3.49 and I got them for 50% off. So really you can't beat that. Now, when they're frozen, they're not as good as fresh mushrooms, but to throw into something like a chili or a stroganoff, any kind of casserole, you're not going to notice that they were frozen. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. I've got some sandwich bags, so I just like to freeze them in this size of sandwich bag. I always reuse the sandwich bags. I know I don't like wasting stuff, and in an application like this one, you know, it's a sandwich bag, it's something that'll probably get thrown out. I always tend to reuse it for something. So, you know, it would be nice if I could just freeze them in the containers, but these containers aren't airtight, so I worry that the mushrooms would get freezer burnt. So we're just going to go ahead and put them in sandwich bags. That's a good size. That's, you know, a portion that you would be able to throw into something really easily. It's not too much or too little. I've even used these in like omelets. It's really good. Again, it saves you a step. I thought that was going to work easier, but it's not. So we'll just put them in there by hand. You can do the same thing. As you know, I do this with my garlic. I process it and then freeze it. You can do this with onions. So if there's a good deal on onions, you can use this process with onions as well. You just kind of slice them up and freeze them in bags, kind of to your liking. Peppers, I've got bell peppers here that we're going to use in one of our meal preps today. You could do it with peppers. I do that a lot with peppers when they're coming out of the garden hot and fast, and I don't have time to deal with them. I'll just kind of stem them, seed them, slice them up, throw them in the freezer, and then they're good to go for when I'm ready for them. All right, so this is one package down. We're going to keep on going and get all 3 of these packaged up and then popped in the freezer. All right, we've got our last package of mushrooms here going into a plastic baggie. So next on the list of things to do, I've got this bag of bell peppers, and I'm gonna go ahead and get them all sliced. Part of our meal prep today, we're going to do a sheet pan chicken fajita sheet pan bake. And I'm not going to cook it, I'm just going to prepare it so that it's ready to go in the oven when I get home from work one day this week. And then also last week when we did our meal prep, I cooked off a couple pounds of ground beef and Italian ground sausage. And I popped it in the freezer because I didn't have time to continue making what I wanted to make. So we're going to go ahead and use that today. We're going to do, this is a new recipe to me. It's a lasagna bechamel with a bechamel sauce. So it's a new recipe to me, but it sounds delicious. So we're gonna make that. And then we have a family celebration, a family dinner that we're going to tonight at my sister-in-law's. And I offered to bring an appetizer. So we're gonna make that. I'm just gonna do a spinach artichoke dip. This is one of my go-tos whenever we have an event that we are taking an appetizer to. And honestly, I make it different every time, but you can't mess it up. So we're gonna go ahead and make that. And then I think that's probably it for our meal prep today, because we're only going to do, well, technically 3 recipes, but the chicken fajita bake is going to come together pretty quickly. It doesn't take long at all. And then the appetizer, it doesn't take long at all. And the lasagna, we've already done the hard part, which is preparing the meat. So yeah, that's our lineup. So right now I'm just going to go ahead. This is one of our homegrown red onions. And I noticed when I went into the bag to get this, I noticed that my onions are starting to get soft. So you know what that means. We're going to have to go ahead and get those processed here shortly. I probably won't have time to do that today, but I will put it on my ever growing to-do list, and we'll make sure that we get that done in the next couple days probably. So this red onion, as I mentioned, it's going to go in our spinach artichoke dip. So I'm just going to dice it up pretty fine. Yesterday, we spent the day doing some final planting. It's nearing the end of November. Today is the 24th of November, and usually I have my garden buttoned up by now, but it kind of got away from me this year. So yesterday we got our garlic planted. We got most of our peonies in the ground. I'm still actually waiting on a shipment I ordered from an Instagram friend. She's out in BC, British Columbia. So I ordered them about 2 weeks ago, and then, sorry, onions, as I mentioned before, they really get me. Anyways, yeah, so I ordered some peony roots. I think I've got 4 more peony roots coming, and Canada Post went on strike about a week ago. So my peony roots are halfway here, but they're just sitting somewhere, unfortunately. So we've had a few nights in the freezing temperatures. I'm hopeful that the peony roots will be okay, but time will tell. So this year, for my garden, I decided that I was going to, every year I kind of decide what I'm going to put my money towards in the fall. And I really wanted to get a row of peonies in my garden this year. So that's what we got done yesterday. I just have to add the final 4, I think, are coming. But I'm so excited. I cannot wait to see how that row does. I have a couple peony plants just kind of in my gardens, like around the house, and they've never done really all that great. I need to kind of revamp my gardens because they're starting to get kind of choked out a little bit by other plants. So I may in the spring kind of revamp those gardens a little bit, but that's for another day. All right, we've got our onion here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and get all of these peppers sliced. 1/2 of a red pepper is all that we are going to need for the artichoke spinach dip. So I'm going to finely dice this. We've got our onion. So I'm going to do that first, actually. I'm going to finely dice my pepper. So a little trick anytime you're doing, if you have chickens, actually, it's not a trick, but one thing I like to do is I have a bowl just off to the side here that I can put all of my scraps into for the chickens. So I always have my garbage out. I've got it out here beside me just to make life a little bit easier for cleanup. And then my chicken bowl here so that I can just put any scraps that I know that they will enjoy right in there, and then they can get that afterwards. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and get all of these peppers sliced and diced, and then we will carry on with making our spinach artichoke dip. Spinach artichoke dip. Goodness me. So this morning I went ahead and made our breakfast meal prep for the week. I just did mini blueberry muffins. Nothing too crazy, and I think we've made those muffins in the past. My daughter loves them. I came across a recipe actually the other day for breakfast cookies, and I think maybe next week I'll try making those. They sounded really good, and they had really good ingredients in them as well, which of course I love. So I thought that was pretty cool. I've never seen or heard of a breakfast cookie. All right, I'm just going to carry on getting these all processed. I did go ahead and put one of our pre-minced garlic frozen pucks in here to start to thaw before I started anything. So we've got that in there. I'm gonna go ahead and make a mess first of all. But I'm gonna go ahead and get my onion in the bowl. I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but I did pull out my cream cheese this morning so that it could soften, so that it's a little easier to handle. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and get our red pepper in here. Now, as I mentioned, I typically make this dip different every time I make it. Sometimes I will caramelize the onions and cook down the peppers ahead of time, but this time I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let them cook in the oven when I bake the dip. And I've done that before and it works out just fine. But if you have someone in your family that doesn't love uncooked onions, which I know is kind of a thing for some people, just go ahead and cook the onions off beforehand, or you can even leave the onions out. Like, this is one of those dips that is totally adaptable. You can make it to however your family likes it. So we've got our onions, our peppers, and our garlic in there. I'm just gonna set that aside and get the rest of these peppers sliced up for our fajita bake. All right, so we have our spinach artichoke dip ready to go in the oven. So I'm gonna put it in the oven at 350 degrees for about 25 minutes. After the 25 minutes, I'm gonna pull it out, top it with cheese, and then broil it for an additional maybe 5 minutes just till the cheese gets nice and melty and bubbly and ooey gooey delicious. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the oven now, and then we're gonna get started on, or finish up I should say, our sheet pan chicken fajita bake. I just wanted to mention that this beautiful antique Pyrex dish was gifted to me by my grandmother-in-law. So my husband Brandon's grandma gifted this to me, or handed it down to me, maybe is the word I'm looking for. But I absolutely love it. It's beautiful and it's got a special meaning behind it, so any chance I get to use it, I take it. All right, into the oven this goes. All right, so we're ready to get going on our chicken fajita bake. So what I'm going to get all of our pre-chopped vegetables into a bowl here. So I've got 5.5 of our bell peppers, and they can be whatever color bell peppers that you like. And you could, instead of slicing them, you could cut them into bite-sized pieces or chunks. Like, you can totally do whatever your heart desires with this recipe. I did go ahead and I chopped 3 medium onions. So I did 2 red onions and a white onion. When I was doing my prep earlier, I don't know why, but I completely forgot that we needed onions for this. All right, so I got that in there. Runaway pepper. Now, I opened up this jar of artichoke hearts for the spinach artichoke dip, and I don't want to waste them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fish them. Actually, I'm just going to drain the juice out of them, and I'm going to add them to this too. So just a moment. All right, so we've got the juice drained from our artichoke hearts. Now I'm just going to go ahead and add them in with our mixture here, and there's not a ton of them, but it's just, I don't want them to go to waste. I've opened the jar. I don't know what else we would use it for, and honestly they'll add some beautiful flavor into this dish, so that's how we'll use those up. Now I'm going to set them aside, and we're going to get going on getting our chicken organized. So I have 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts here. Oops. And they are still frozen. I took them out this morning, so they've just been sitting out on my counter, but of course they're still pretty frozen. But that's okay, because we're not gonna be eating this probably not until Tuesday, maybe tomorrow. Either way, they'll have lots of time to thaw out in the fridge. But anyways, I've got 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts. You can do whatever your preference is, chicken thighs, yeah, just whatever you like. I happen to have these in the freezer, so that's what we're using today. And honestly, if your chicken is a little bit frozen, it makes it kind of easier to cut. So I kind of did myself a favor there. So yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and get these cut into bite-sized pieces, and then I'm gonna add them into the bowl with the vegetables, because we're gonna add some seasoning and toss everything together. And then the night that we wanna eat this, we'll just have to dump it out onto my big sheet pan and bake it off. Now we are planning to have these as fajita bowls, so I will cook some rice, and we will serve this over rice with some fresh lime, possibly some guacamole and sour cream, and it'll be delicious. But in the past, we've done it as fajitas. I've just put it onto a wrap, and then we've actually air fried them, just added cheese, put them in the air fryer, and that makes a delicious supper too. We really enjoy it that way. I just don't have any wraps, and I don't have time to make any, so this is how we're doing it. There's a little bit of fat on this chicken breast. I'm just going to trim that off. All right, so I'm going to bring you in closer, but the next part is super easy. All you have to do is add the juice of 1 lime, which I will do, a package of ranch seasoning, and some taco mix. So we had some taco kits that expired. So instead of just throwing everything out, I took them apart. I fed the shells to the chickens, and I took out the salsa and the taco seasoning because it's still good. The taco seasoning, like, it's a seasoning, and they were only like 2 weeks expired, unfortunately. I hate wasting food, so the nice thing about having chickens is they'll eat most of the scraps, and then anything like this I always keep and use. So we're going to use up this taco seasoning. You could make your own taco seasoning, it's really easy, but I have this that I want to use up, so that's what we're going to use. So yeah, I'm just going to add everything in here, give it a good stir, and then we'll add it to our freezer bag. But I'm going to bring you in close so that you can see a little bit closer. All right, friends, so we have our spinach artichoke dip done. Well, it's just finishing off in the oven. And then we've got our chicken fajita bake prepped. I put the lid on the bowl, and it's chilling in the fridge until we're ready for it. So now we're gonna get going on our lasagna with bechamel sauce. So I'm gonna get some vegetables prepped first. We need, the recipe calls for 2 carrots, but I had 3 in my fridge and there are some bad bits on it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use the 3. We've got 2 sticks of celery and an onion. So I'm gonna get the carrot peeled first. Now this is a new recipe. I've never made this one before. I came across it on scratchpantry.com and I can link that for you below if you think that you'd like to give it a try. It sounds delicious. I've never had a lasagna like this. Typically, I make a lasagna and there's quite a bit of cheese in it. And that's kind of the funny thing about this recipe. It doesn't actually call for much cheese at all. In fact, the only cheese that we are going to use, I believe, is Parmesan cheese. The bechamel, which is a white sauce, it's going to take place of the cheese. So that'll be interesting. I think it's going to be delicious. Another interesting thing about the recipe is it calls for you to use the no-bake style lasagna noodles. Well, I don't have those. I have no-bake, like you're supposed to cook them ahead of time. I don't have those. I have like the oven, I think they're called, oven ready. The ones that you just put in your pan and they cook in the oven. So that's what I'm gonna use. If I had the right noodles, sorry, my dogs always decide that they're so thirsty when I'm recording, and the water bowl is just off the kitchen here, so you can always hear them drinking. Anyways, what was I saying? I don't remember what I was saying now. Oh, noodles, lasagna noodles. So if I had the appropriate noodles, I think I would be able to make this ahead of time and not bake it off, although I'm not really sure. I think I'd probably bake it off either way. Either way, the plan is to assemble, get everything organized, and then I'm going to bake it so that then the night that we're going to eat it, we just have to reheat it. Now, I was reading, and it sounds like you could do this as a freezer meal as well, which would be handy. I was originally going to double this recipe, but because it's a recipe we haven't had before, I'm just gonna hold off just in case we don't like it. Like I said, I'm sure we're going to like it, but Brandon is a lover of lasagna, and I'm just not sure if this is going to be like a lasagna replacement, you know what I mean? I just wonder if he's going to still want kind of your traditional style lasagna, which I do meal prep all the time, so he'll still get that one, but I just don't like to make too many in advance, again, just in case we don't like them. So I've got my big pot, I don't know, behind me here. I just have about 2 tablespoons of oil in there, preheating, and then we're gonna add our veggies. So we put our celery and carrots and onion all in the pan together to saute down, and then we would add our meat, our beef, and our sausage. Now, our meat is already pre-cooked, so what I'll do is I'll saute and make sure that these vegetables are completely pre-cooked before I add in the beef, because I don't want to risk them being raw. And that was my timer for my spinach artichoke dip. It's all finished. Oh, it's gonna be so good. Bubbling away. Can't wait to dig into that. So for that, I've turned my oven off, but I'm just gonna leave it in the oven just so that it stays warm. And it's okay if that cheese gets a little bit more brown. We have, as I mentioned, that family dinner to attend tonight. Actually, it's at 4 o'clock, and I want the dip to be nice and warm for when we go. So when I transport it, I'll just put it in, I'll probably just wrap it up in a towel. I have an insulated basket. I'll wrap it up in a towel and put it in the basket, and by the time it's just where we're going, my sister-in-law, she's just about 15 minutes away. So by the time we get there, it'll be perfect temperature for us to dive in. Okay, so I want to get my carrots in the pan first because of course they're going to take the longest to soften up. Okay, so we're gonna let those cook while we look after the rest of the veggies here. So this celery has seen better days, but that's fine. It'll taste delicious. I'm just gonna keep my celery off to the side because it won't take long to soften. I want to give the carrots a good amount of time to soften up, and then I don't really want to overcook my celery and onion. I'm going to start crying again from this darn onion. And I'm crying again. So let me go pull myself together, give the carrots a couple more minutes, and I'll be back. Alright, so our carrots have been cooking for, I don't know, about 5-10 minutes maybe. So I'm going to go ahead and get the celery and the onion popped in there to get that cooking up. So I'm going to let that cook down for, I don't know, maybe about 3 minutes. Just over here I have our cans of, it's supposed to be crushed tomatoes. I have diced tomatoes, so we're going to use 3 cans of diced tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. A little trick, if you're using tomato paste and typically you don't use the entire tin of tomato paste, you can freeze that. So again, you can freeze it in the pucks like I do with the garlic. Just scoop it with a cookie scoop or anything really onto a surface. Cookie sheet works great. Pop it in the freezer, flash freeze it, and then once they're frozen solid, put them into a little sandwich bag, and then you've got ready to go measured out tablespoon size tomato paste. And that's a good way of not letting it go to waste, number one, because if you're like me, it goes into the fridge and then you forget about it, or you don't use it up in a recipe. So yeah, you can just measure them up, freeze them, and then you've got them when you're ready for them. So we're just gonna let that cook away, and we'll be back in a minute. All right, so our veggie mixture, I think they call this a mirepoix when you've got onions, carrots, and celery. So that's softened down. It's smelling lovely in here. So we're gonna go ahead and add our salt and pepper. Now, as you know, normally I'm not one to typically measure ingredients, but because this is a new recipe, I really want to try to stick to the recipe and measure everything out. So we're gonna try our best to do that. So we've got 2 teaspoons of pepper. So 1, 2, and then we're going to add our 2 teaspoons of salt. Now we're going to add our meat mixture. So this is what we made the other day. Just, I think it's about 2 pounds ground beef, a pound of hot Italian sausage. Usually I like to reuse our freezer bags, but once I've had meat in them, I do just toss them out. Okay, and then next we're going to add 5 garlic cloves. And we really like garlic, so I'm going to add 5 of our frozen packs. Going to be very garlicky. I'm just going to let that cook for about 2 minutes just to warm the meat mixture through and to get that garlic nice and thawed out and softened. Alright, so that's been cooking for about 2 minutes. Our garlic isn't completely melted, but that's okay. The next step, we are going to add 2 tablespoons of our tomato paste. So it's going to continue cooking and that garlic will continue to melt. And that's about 2 tablespoons. So we're going to give that a stir, and then we let this cook for 2 more minutes. Okay, so it's been about the 2 minutes since we put our tomato paste in. So now we're going to add our red wine. So the recipe calls for 1 cup of dry red wine. I just have a red wine. So we're going to add 1 cup of red wine. And we're going to cook until the wine has reduced by half. So I'm going to let this cook for a few minutes, and then we'll be back to add in the crushed tomatoes and basil. Alright, so the wine is all cooked down there. It doesn't take long when you've got a hot pot. So I'm going to go ahead and add my 3 cans of tomatoes. And the recipe doesn't say if we should drain the tomatoes, so I'm just adding the entire contents of the can. And maybe you should have grabbed a larger pot. Very carefully give this a stir. Oh, and we have to add our dried basil. 1 tablespoon. A little bit extra. Alright, so now we let our sauce simmer for 1 hour or until very thick. So I'm gonna let this cook away for as long as I can. We have a dinner to go to, so we're gonna go to the dinner, and then when we get back, I will probably at that point assemble and finish off the sauce. All right, friends, so we are back from our family dinner, and the spinach artichoke dip was a huge hit. I mean, who doesn't like a good spinach dip? But anyways, everyone was raving about it, so that's awesome. That makes me feel really good. Oh, and I have a little bow hair clip on, whoops. Anyway, so we are back. We're just going to finish up with our lasagna bechamel. So my meat sauce, my bolognese sauce as they call it, has been simmering away. So I simmered it for about 45 minutes before we left, and then I let it cool, and then while we were doing bedtime routine, I turned it back on. So it's been simmering for probably another 20 minutes or so. So at this point now, we are going to go ahead and add our cream. So we are going to add in 1 cup of heavy cream. So I've already pre-measured it here. And of course, I spilled it. That's all right. So we've got our 1 cup of heavy cream. We'll just get that stirred in. I'll clean up my mess to save myself later. I have to tell you, my house smells incredible. All right, so that's good. Now I'm just gonna let this continue. Can't talk, it's late. It's getting close to bedtime. Anyways, I'm just going to let this continue to simmer while we make our bechamel sauce. I'm just gonna move it back there. Maybe I'll show you what it's looking like. Okay, so to start off our bechamel sauce, we need to get 1 cup of butter into our pot. So I forgot to take butter out of my freezer. I don't normally steal from the butter dish. I'm gonna add maybe just a touch more. We're gonna get that melting, and we need to add our salt and pepper. So we need 1/2 teaspoon. It also calls for nutmeg, but I'm not a huge fan of nutmeg in cream sauces. You know what? I said at the beginning I was gonna follow the recipe. So let me dig out my nutmeg and follow the recipe. Okay, I got my ground nutmeg. So we're gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of, it's supposed to be fresh ground nutmeg. I don't have fresh. I should try that. I've always wanted to try fresh ground nutmeg. All right. 1 teaspoon going in. And then we're going to add our salt and pepper. So the recipe calls for white pepper, which I don't have, but I have black pepper. And typically the reason why you use white pepper in a white sauce like this is so that, I'm gonna add just a smidge more, is so that you don't see the pepper specks. I don't care if the white sauce isn't perfectly white. Fine. Then we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of salt. So remembering that this is my 1/2 teaspoon measure. Okay, and we're just gonna let that melt. Once that's melted, we're gonna add our flour. So then we need 1 cup of flour. So while this is melting down, I'm gonna go grab our flour. All right, so at this point, we're going to add our 1 cup of flour. And we're just gonna go ahead and cook our flour for about 2 minutes. So the point behind this process is just getting that kind of flour flavor out of it. And this is actually called making a roux when you do this part. just gonna thicken right up. And you want to be careful at this stage because it can burn pretty easily. Okay, so our roux has been cooking for about 2 minutes now. So we're going to add our 4.5 cups of whole milk. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a whisk. Now we're going to go ahead and let this cook until the sauce thickens, which will probably take about 5 to 7 minutes. So we'll bring it back once we are thickened up and ready to assemble. Alright, so this has been cooking for about 5 minutes and it's nice and thick. So we're going to go ahead and turn the heat off. And we're going to get ready to make the final product. Okay, so we have all of our components. We've got our bechamel sauce, our bolognese, we've got our noodles just off to the side here, our Parmesan. So I went ahead and did myself a favor and just bought some pre-shredded Parmesan. You don't have to do that. You can buy a wedge and shred your own. But let me tell you, I am so glad that I did this for myself because I was thinking, oh my gosh, one more step that I have to do, but it's okay. I was thinking ahead. So I'm following the directions. What I'm going to do first is just put a thin layer of our meat sauce or our bolognese sauce on the bottom, just for our noodles. And now this meat sauce is seeming a little thin to me, but I think it'll be okay because, again, we're using the oven ready noodles, so they're going to need a little bit more liquid or moisture. Alrighty. And now we're just going to layer. We're just going to go ahead and line our noodles up. I like to try not to overlap them too much if I can avoid it. Of course, just do whatever works best for you. And then any little pieces that I broke off, I just kind of fit in. Okay, now I have to check my recipe. Okay, spread a thin layer of bolognese sauce, layer with lasagna noodles, 2 cups bechamel, half a cup of Parmesan cheese, and 2 cups of bolognese. And then repeat. Okay, well that seems relatively easy. So next I need to do my bechamel. And it's actually really quite thick. I was a little bit worried, like, just the fact that there's like so little cheese that it requires. But really, this sauce might as well be a cheese. It's thick and it's ooey and gooey and oh my gosh, it smells so good. I had a little taste of it and it's delicious. No surprise there. Okay, we're gonna do a little more. And then I think I'm gonna get a spatula or a spoon. And I'm just gonna kind of spread it out a little bit more evenly and see if I need any more. I wish you could smell my kitchen right now. It's heavenly. Okay, so that's our bechamel, and then we're gonna do about half a cup Parmesan. And no surprise here, but I'm not measuring. I'm just gonna put a good healthy layer, about half of that container. And then we're going to put 2 cups of our meat sauce. I was going to use my measuring cup for this so that I could properly measure out the right amount, but I was worried because it's plastic and my sauces are pretty hot. I didn't want to risk melting my measuring cup. I'm sure it's probably heat safe. I don't use my dishwasher ever, actually. So even if it was dishwasher safe, like I don't know. I don't really pay attention to that. And I'm sure it's fine up to a certain temperature, but I just don't like you putting plastic in hot things if I don't have to. I actually try to avoid plastic when I'm cooking as much as possible. Of course, it's not always possible, but I do try to be mindful of that. Okay, so now we are on to our next layer of noodles. More pieces to just, I don't want to be short on my lasagna noodles. Okay, now we're going to do another layer of bechamel. Okay, so now we've got the rest of our Parmesan cheese for this layer. And I do have a little extra. I did fresh grate some, just a little bit, just for the top, because I didn't think I had enough. And now our bolognese. It's pretty full. And I have so much bolognese sauce left. I wonder if I should make another little one. I think I will. So what I'm gonna do with this one, I am just gonna top it off with this Parmesan that I grated over here. How good does that look? All right, so that's one. I'm just gonna quickly whip together another one because I don't want any of this to go to waste, and I've already got all my ingredients out. So I'm just gonna whip up another one and I'll freeze that one. All right, friends, so we got our 2 lasagna bechamel done. So this one I will cover with saran wrap, and then it actually has a lid that goes on top of it, and we'll freeze this one and we'll enjoy this later. This one I'm going to cover with tin foil, and we'll pop this one in the fridge and it'll be ready to go for us when we want to have this for supper. Probably I'll end up cooking this one tomorrow night. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I was going to go ahead and bake this one off and just have it ready to go, just have to reheat it. But I think I'm going to hold off. It's 8:30 at night now, and I don't want to have to stay up and wait for it to cook and then wait for it to cool to go into the fridge. So I'm just going to pop it into the fridge as it is. It'll sit and all those flavors will meld and it'll just get even more delicious. The recipe says that it bakes for 45 minutes. That being said, I think I'll probably bake it for closer to an hour because I use the oven ready noodles and they do take a little bit longer. So I'll I'll bake it off probably for the hour, 55 minutes, and then it'll need to sit probably for 10 to 15 minutes before we serve it. But anyways, this one will get ready for the freezer. This one will go in the fridge. And if I can remember, I will show you a picture of what it looks like when we enjoy it for supper one night this week. But that's it for today, guys. So we got lots done. I know it was a little bit all over the place. Of course, it had to be a little bit different today because we were kind of hopping in and out. But I wanted to thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate that you take the time to spend with me. It really means so much to me. So we got a lot done today. We got 2 lasagna bechamel, one for the freezer, one for the fridge. We got our chicken fajita bake ready to go. I'll bring you along later in the week when I do that one as well, when I put it on the sheet pan and bake it off, just so you can see what it looks like at the end. And then we also got our spinach dip, which was really enjoyed. Everybody raved about it, like I said. So I am super happy. It's been a great, productive Sunday, family time in the kitchen. It's just like my ideal Sunday. So again, friends, I wanted to thank you. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.